Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm the host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. If you're listening to this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and please subscribe. I'm very honored and privileged to welcome my next guest today. She is a life coach and psychology expert. She's the founder of the Dr. Bryant Institute and the Dr. Bryant Foundation. She's the president of the NAACP Chapter 1069 in San Pedro. She's the author of The Mental Detox, The Power and Guidance to Implement Peace, Joy, Balance, and Financial Abundance. So please help me welcome my guest today, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant.
Wow, Jacob, what a awesome introduction. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited and grateful to be able to use your platform to provide different information and tools that folks can use with the intent for them to have just the best quality of life that they can have with the information that you're providing. So thank you for allowing, me and other people to use your platform so that folks can get information that's very much needed and resources that they probably wouldn't have if it wasn't for your podcast. So thank you in advance.
You're so welcome, Dr. Bryant. So let's get started. So when did you get interested in psychology, and how did that passion evolve into the desire to pursue a career in a medical field?
Oh, goodness. So for me, I initially was going to go to law school. And for some reason, it just wasn't sitting with my purpose and with just who I am naturally as a young woman at that time. I'm still a young woman, but at that time, a much younger woman. So I just dived kind of deep down into like my own stuff and what that looks like and what that is. And I just realized that there was a lot of healing that I had to do. There was a lot of abandonment issues that were coming up for me and a lot of different moving parts that were broken. And so in the midst of, stepping back and looking at that, that is what, drove me to be very, very strong and sure about the field of psychology. And then in the midst of me entering my master's program and before my doctorate program, I entered a really, really deep, intense. I took a deep dive into my own healing journey, side by a life coach, Iyanla Vanzant, who has her own show on the OWN network, and started to work side by a little bit with Oprah and some of her events that she was having and her Soulful Sunday information programs that she was having. Iyanla was helping her with that. And so I was honored and privileged enough to have, Iyanla coach me through a lot of my stuff. And I visited her workshops and different things that she had. And while diving deep into my own healing journey and really being able to find peace from my broken pieces, I just thought this is magical. And it is a human right for everyone to have a peace of mind and to have a great quality of life and for them to have mental health, right? And be healthy. Because I got to a place of going, wow, didn't know if this exists, but I've arrived and it feels so peaceful, so liberating, and so good. And so my brokenness turned into a lot of liberation and peace and joy. And it ended up being the exact tools that I use to really change folks' lives. And I give them my toolbox open-heartedly. And from what they have, shared with me is the tools are really, really working for them, just like they did for myself. So that's the blessing, and finding yourself and really looking at your own stuff and not being embarrassed by it, not being judgmental towards yourself by it, but being very open and welcomed and kind and gentle with who you are, where you are, and what you're going through, so that you can heal through the essence of love and compassion.
That is one incredible story, Dr. Bryant, and it means a lot. And when I hear Oprah and Iyanla Vanzant, I got to say that must have been a huge privilege. So what were some of the lessons that you learned from them that helped you prepare for the next chapters of your career?
One of the biggest tools in eye-opening awareness that Iyanla gave to me was unconditional love. She really showed me the different angles of how I was missing unconditional love within myself, on how I, was really confident in myself aesthetically and very confident in myself, internally and externally, I should say, and just really shined a light on, my success and a lot of what I had going on. but how a lot of my moving parts that needed healing, I was not very gentle with. I was very critical and very hard on. And I didn't really want to spend time with that piece, not because I was afraid of it, but because I was a little mad at it for being quote unquote weak and not being as strong as my other attributes. And so when she brought that to my awareness, there was a lot of resistance on behalf of me to that, because I'm going, me unconditional, like I love myself unconditionally. Look at how far I've come. Look at who I am and look at what I do. And she was saying, that's just it, right? Those things that you just named can very much be distractions for the parts and pieces of you that you're neglecting, negating, and you're not loving on. And unconditional love is loving the good, the bad, and the ugly of yourself, your bad choices, your good choices, standing in your power and your authentic self while all of that is still going on, and saying, I love all of it equally. And there's nothing about me that I negate, because to negate one piece of you is the epitome of self-hate. And so you can't have self-love and self-hate at the same time. They can't coexist. And so with that started my journey of discovery of me and what are these parts and pieces that I may be, deflecting from. And I actually went and introduce myself to these pieces of me. And it ended up being those parts and pieces of me that I introduced myself to end up being the parts and pieces of me that I fell in love with the most, and that I now visit the most, I spend the most time with, because those are the parts of me that I go, wow, I didn't know that the brokenness hid all of the beauty. And there's so much beauty in your pain, but you'll never know that until you go back and visit it and say, hey, this pain looks this big because it felt bigger than it is. But when you visit it, there's beauty in that pain, because that pain is what builds your muscle. And the muscle is what you need to go to the next level and to sustain a healthy lifestyle and a healthy mental health.
And I believe in Mental Health Awareness Month is in May, and I think this is a powerful lesson that I think people should learn. And this is the first time that I've actually delved into this topic in my career, actually. So thank you so much for sharing your story about this. I would love to talk to you about some of your tools, and one of the tools is your book, Mental Detox. So it's been 7 years since you released that book. Can you describe the writing process of Mental Detox to my audience?
Absolutely. Mental Detox, as you just stated, Jacob, is my book that I authored and wrote in 2014. It ended up being the bestseller and the reader's favorite 5-star in the world. Didn't write it with that intent. I just wrote it and told God, my intent is that every reader that reads this book gets what you would have them and they need, not what I am writing from an ego, perspective. I just want to write down these tools, and I want you to transform it as needed for each individual. And that's exactly what God did. And so mental detox, what those steps are, the first thing is to take inventory of who you are, with truth. We can't heal a lie. We can only heal the truth. And so you want to be very honest about everything about yourself. And you want to look at that inventory list, and you want to scratch off the things that do not serve you. You want to keep the things that do serve you. That's the beginning parts of taking inventory of what I call in my book, your garden. And then once we inventory what doesn't work, we plow out what doesn't work. And how do you plow out the seeds or the roses with thorns or whatever it is you don't like in it that's not serving you? You literally go face it, and you look into it, and you have a conversation with self about it. And within that conversation of self about it, you start to find the importance of why it had to be there, but why it also has run its course. And so you start to do what we call, or I call, the Bible calls pruning. You start your pruning process, and then you look at your other inventory, and there's some things that you do keep, but instead of rooting it up, you just prune some of the leaves, or you cut back on it so that it can grow back healthier and it can multiply, which is what pruning does. It multiplies you. Now, this is the trick. While you're pruning is called cutting. And while you're cutting back, does it hurt? Of course. Anytime you're cutting or pruning, you feel some of that, which is called growing pains. And so these are the pains that we don't like to feel, but they're the pains that we do want to experience because they catapult us. And so just like I have a beautiful garden at home, my gardener prunes them in the winter. And that's in like about November, December. And then he tells me, hey, in March, Dr. Bryant, you're going to get these beautiful roses and flowers that actually blossom in multiples. And I remember the first time he did it, I was like, don't prune my roses, don't prune my garden, like, because I have to sit and see literally no type of flowers or roses for almost 2 months, Jacob. And I didn't like having to look at just soil and nubs. But when March came around, like he promised me, my roses multiply. They start growing in clutters. My flowers start growing in multiple colors, the colors that they weren't even last season. They were coming in red and white mixed up. And I was going, oh my God, this is really multiplying in the way that he promised. And that is exactly how life works. We cut back to catapult forward. We prune so that we can multiply. But a lot of us don't like the process of the promise. And the process is when I described me looking at my garden for 2 months going, there's nothing here for me to look at, but there's everything going on in the DNA of what is processing for the March promise of all the blossom. And that's what you're doing in your gardening when you're doing your mental detox. And then of course, after you do that, you want to pick seeds that you want to plant that were not there. So in the midst of, or should I say, following your inventory, you start to write down, what is it that I do want to be and who is it that I do want to become? Well, let's plant those seeds in your garden. And then the final process of just the mental detox, not of life, of course, because it's a journey, is the maintenance. What do you do in a garden? You water it, you nurture it, you love it, you make sure the soil is good. And you have to make sure it has enough nourishment. So you become soil to your garden and you facilitate the seeds you plant and you nurture it by what? By your affirmations, by what? By your circle of wealth, by what? If you're into God, if you're into spirituality, if you're into Abraham Hicks or Oprah, whoever you watch, you water that by watching your YouTube videos, reading your self-help books, and you do this daily or maybe every other day, but you make sure you maintain it by watering your garden. And then lastly, your relationships, which is most important. You make sure that you are maintaining relationships that will sustain who you want to become and who you are trying to show up as, because your environment will change you before you change it. So you got to make sure that your environment is conducive to who you want to be so you can maintain that authenticity.
Those are powerful lessons. And I got to say, that just gave me chills. One of the things that I admire about you, Dr. Bryant, is your ability to give back to your community. And in 2024, your team that has evolved into the Institute will celebrate its 10th anniversary because your team has created and provided employment opportunities while providing food, hygiene, clothing, and additional resources to disadvantaged communities in Los Angeles County. So how has your mission grown and how has it evolved?
Yeah, excellent. And yes, it's been since 2014, I believe. But I started the Dr. Bryant Foundation because we would go out as a Dr. Bryant team initially and provide food and resources, school supplies, hundreds and hundreds of laptops, free Wi-Fi, employment, expungement services for folks who did have a criminal background or maybe a misdemeanor background so they can re-entry and get jobs and again, live a great quality of life because that's a human right. And so we would partner with the city of Los Angeles, partner with our local officials. We'll partner with just community leaders, churches, and they would provide us with their location or resources. And we would make sure that we're giving back to the community, toy drives. Christmas, we did a huge laptop giveaway and there were families, parents in there who were leaving with the laptop and they were in just tears. They were full of tears because they were saying, this is going to be our only Christmas gift for our kids. And had y'all not put together this event, we would have not had a Christmas gift, one. And two, not only is this going to allow my child to do their schoolwork on the computer, this will allow myself and my wife to apply for employment. Because in today's era, you can't apply for employment if you don't have internet, if you don't have a computer access, because everything is done electronically. And so there's no more walking in saying, hey, are you hiring? Give me a physical application and can you give me an interview? And so that one laptop, which may seem small to all of us who are privileged enough to have, laptops, computers, and Wi-Fi, that may seem like something small to us, but that was life-changing to those families. And so those are things for me that are rewarding. And I always say, what God moves through you, he gives to you. So do I do it so that I can keep it? No, but it feels really good that I'm able to not keep the laptop per se, but I'm able to share and keep the joy and the gratitude that these families take with them. I also get a piece of that. And that's really, really rewarding.
I think that's incredible work. You've done a lot of incredible work, Dr. Bryant.
Thank you.
In addition to your work with the foundation, you also started the Institute as well. So why did you decide this was the right time to open the Institute? And can you describe some of the courses that you offer to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Dr. Bryant Institute is a company that offers a hybrid coaching approach, which hybrid is a mix between therapy and coaching. And I always explain it, and folks are really glad that I explain it because they use it, know the difference between therapy and coaching. But therapy is where you're coming in, you're telling the background of your story, you're telling what happened as a child, you're expressing and explaining experiences so that you show the professional what your learned behaviors are, and what your family dynamic is, and that helps you understand why you think the way you think, why you behave the way you behave, why you're in alignment, out of alignment, why your norm is what it is, why your dysfunction is why it is, why your baseline dysfunction is what it is, right? So now you have that understanding of why in the hell am I kind of crazy in these areas, or why in the heck do I choose the same person, or do I like a certain little dysfunction in my atmosphere when I don't like it, it feels uncomfortable, but I keep choosing it or I keep creating it. Well, therapy says, let's do a psychodynamic approach, which is let's look in your past and see what's going on. And then let's talk about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and try to switch up some of those learned behaviors and reprogram you. Once we do that, coaching steps in and says, okay, now that we've got the therapy stuff out the way of who you are, why you're like that, let's look at all of your fruit so we can figure out your root and we can switch that stuff up. Coaching says, now who you want to be, where you want to go. Cool. Let's give you the tools to get there the fastest, most effective way. And let me give you tools to maintain that so you can be happy and healthy in managing your newness of where you're going. So both work best as a hybrid. And that's why I created a hybrid approach called the Dr. Bryant modality or Dr. Bryant approach. One, therapy does a good job of what it does. Coaching does a good job of what it does, but they both need each other. And because I started off as a marriage, family, and child therapist, my foundation is therapy. It's psychodynamic and CBT, which is what I just described. I transitioned into a life coach because I knew that once I got my clients through their stuff, that I'd be leaving them hanging if I didn't help them get to where they want to be. And I didn't want to have to refer them out. I said, I can learn to do both. And I have created a hybrid approach, which is what Dr. Bryant Institute offers. And then our online courses and programs, we have a life coaching hybrid program where I teach my tools and my principles on how do you coach someone from a hybrid perspective, how can you be most effective, and how can you make sure you're not causing more impairments when you are coaching them, and you're able to be like soil is to a beautiful rose, and you just facilitate while they grow. And you let them see, right, what their growth can do for them, which empowers them and teaches them how to grow interdependently. We also have different courses that talk about depression, anxiety, how to alleviate it, that talk about how to deal with grief and how to move through the different stages of that. And so our online courses either can help you become a coach like myself with my very effective and resultful modality and approach, or it can just teach you more about yourself if you're experiencing anxiety or adjustment disorder, or you're trying to get through a breakup and it's really, you're grieving from it. And so we offer something for both the client and or the professional who wants to get into the field of coaching.
That's incredible. And before we continue on with our conversation really quickly, I'm very impressed with what you've been doing with Teen Mom Family Reunion and how you've been able to help out those women. So kudos to you. And so what has been like working with them on MTV?
Oh, I love everything about my teen moms and teen dads. They're adults now, but those young adults are amazing. They wanted to heal, I believe, a lot more than they even knew they wanted to heal. They want to be better. They are using the tools. They are doing the work. They were a little apprehensive at the beginning, which they had every reason to be. They didn't know me. They didn't know what the network was bringing and giving them. And when you are dealing with TV and being in reality for 10 plus years of your life, then you know that spontaneity comes and it's not always what you want. And so they had every reason to kind of be apprehensive about, what are we doing? What is this coaching stuff, right? What is this all about? And is it going to be drama, or does this woman really have our best interest at heart? And when they seen that I was, there to have their best interest at heart, give them the tools that they need, and really hold their hand through it and love them through the process, they really opened up their heart to me. And obviously not just to me, but to the millions of fans and viewers that we have on the show. And for that, they are courageous, and I admire their vulnerability to trust themselves and me and say, hey, I feel like there's a good vibe here. My discernment says I can trust you. Let's go all the way. And, we have really connected in that trust space, and they have really made some really life-changing strides in their life with using the tools that were provided to them. And it's really adorable because you have a lot of their kids, who reference, well, Coach B said this, or, oh, Mom, did you talk to Dr. Bryant about this before you did this? Or they say, Mom, Dr. Bryant said process before you produce. Or, Mom, be like soil, like Coach B said. And so the beauty of it, Jacob, is it's not just something that's affecting and changing the lives of the folks, the cast that we see on Teen Mom Family Reunion. They're taking this stuff back and they're implementing this into their homes and their households. And what that does is that breaks any dysfunctional pathology that might have been going on, that they are now becoming the change advocate in changing their family dynamic for the better. So this is helping them generationally, and it's helping them as a whole dynamic as a family. And there's no bigger blessing than taking something good and letting that be contagious versus taking dysfunction and letting that be something that contaminates your home and your family. So I'm so proud of them, and they know that I love them so much.
And thank you so much for doing all of that work with them, Dr. Bryant. It seems like they're doing a lot of wonderful things.
They are.
We got to start writing down our conversation. So if you had your chance to meet with someone who is looking to get help from a life coach, to look for a life coach, what advice would you share with them?
Oh, that's such a great question. That finding a perfect fit from a life coach or a therapist is like dating. It's like finding a perfect fit when it comes to a relationship, right? Or marriage. You don't just jump right in with the first coach unless it fits, unless it feels good. I always say you want to check in with how your body and how you feel when you're speaking and talking to that coach or that therapist. Do you feel open? Do you feel trusting? Do you feel de-armed? Or do you feel resistant? Do you feel defensive? Do you feel like they don't get you? Cultural competence is extremely important when you're talking about therapy and life coaching. It's very important to have competence on the different cultures. I have a really amazing client who is Middle Eastern, and I am very culturally competent with many cultures, but I wasn't as culturally competent with hers. And so what the beauty of the relationship is, I allowed her to, and she was open with teaching me, educating me, because just because I'm the doctor with the titles and the experience and been doing this 13 years, that doesn't make me a qualified know-it-all. What that should make me is a qualified, open-hearted person who wants to learn so much about your culture so that I can help you to the fullest of my potential. And hopefully I get more people like you from your culture. And then I have one up on how I can help them. And so she was teaching me the different values of how, their marriage works. And the man is more of, his voice is more louder and respected. And she doesn't like that. And she's having a internal conflict with saying, hey, I'm a woman and I have a voice. And I know traditionally in the Middle Eastern culture, what the man says trumps, but I don't like what the man's saying right now. And I want to speak up, and I'm depressed and I don't feel good about this stuff. And my family's not supporting me, not because they don't love me, but because they're holding on to cultural tradition. And so it was so amazing for her to come in, and I was so honored to be able to dive right emotionally and mentally into her culture, and then help her understand where she's at and why it's been a struggle for her. And so cultural competence is important. If I would have projected my own culture values on her, that would be totally inappropriate. That would have caused more impairment, and I wouldn't have been able to meet her where she was. And I know for sure she wouldn't have felt respected, and she wouldn't have felt my investment in her and not in my own values in projecting things on her that may not fit what she wants. So make sure you find someone who's gets your culture, has a competence, and if they don't, they're open to learning you and they have a really strong interest in who you are, which then will result in them helping you grow into the authenticity of who you are and not their plan for you. It's not the therapist or the professional's plan, the coach's plan. It's your plan. And we just help you navigate that again by being soil for you and giving you tools that will help you build what you want and not destroy that of what you're trying to build.
Awesome. So the final question, are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
Where can my audience connect with you on social media, and how can they have been able to learn more about your work as well?
Awesome. Sure. So on social media, I am _Dr. Bryant. That's just _Dr. Bryant. On Facebook, just put in Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. And you can also Google me, Dr. Bryant or Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. I come up number 1 on Google. You also can go to my website, which is drbryant.co. That's drbryant.co, not .com. And on there, you can contact me and send me an email through my contact form. And it has my book available there, my services that I offer. And then it also tells you a little bit about who the heck I am and how I've been effective at certain things, and why you may possibly want to either book me to speak at your event, to facilitate a workshop, and or maybe possibly be your coach.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bryant. Now, guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our Apple Podcast, Deezer, Google Podcast, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and Spreaker pages. Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. Are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. Now, Dr. Bryant, I just want to let you know that jakes.shake.com will celebrate its 11th year this August.
Yay! Congratulations. That's amazing. You've been doing it and you've been obedient, obviously. You've been sticking to the plan. And I always tell my clients, even my loved ones, when they say, what's the recipe to success? How did you get where you are from just an inner city girl? And I say, the main thing is to do what you've been doing, Jake, is to penetrate the same field, the same dream, the same goal until you have a breakthrough. You just keep hitting it before you know it. Boom. The breakthrough does happen. Or if the breakthrough doesn't happen big, you're building up to what is collectively the big breakthrough. So I'm so proud of you for not stopping. And you got to continue to just knock, because obviously you knock, the door opens, you ask, you do receive, you seek, you do find. And as long as you continue to use your principles, you will get results, because I'm telling you right now, 100% the work works. And you see it because you're on 11 years. So congratulations. I'm proud of you, and keep rocking and rolling. Don't ever stop. There's not even until. You just keep going and going and going, because it's a journey and it's not a destination. So keep being a rock star, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bryant. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our conversation today. I really appreciate it. Dr. Bryant, it was an honor and a privilege to speak with you. So thank you so much for carving up your time with me.
Thank you for having me. You were amazing.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.